She was raised in the Bronx, not as a political talking point or a campaign slogan, but because she actually spent her childhood there. She is intimately familiar with those exact streets. She knows the layout of those apartment buildings. She understands the families who have resided in those communities for 3 to 4 generations, raising their kids and burying their elders there, completely unaware that a federal security mandate would eventually arrive at their doorstep demanding they relocate for a soccer championship. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez placed a file on her desk, stared directly at Pete Hegseth across the room, and delivered a chilling statement that silenced the entire chamber by declaring that he had evicted her constituents for a sporting event. Hegseth's primary attorney immediately grabbed his legal notepad. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez then proceeded to open the dossier. If you are a new viewer to this channel, hit the subscribe button immediately because what follows is entirely distinct from a standard policy debate regarding event safety or interagency coordination. You are watching a congresswoman from the Bronx actively demanding accountability from the official whose department authorized the mandate that forcibly removed families from their residences during the months preceding the World Cup. This was not a matter of eminent domain or a judicial decree, but rather a Pentagon security order authorized by the Secretary of Defense that ordered residents to clear out of designated World Cup security perimeters within a 30-day window. The setting was House Oversight Committee Room 2184 on a Tuesday morning. The official schedule described the hearing as a review of Department of Defense World Cup security zone implementations and their associated community impact guidelines. It sounded entirely routine. However, the situation was absolutely anything but routine. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entered the room holding a dossier along with 3 printed photographs. She placed the items face down on her desk and completely ignored them for the initial 41 minutes. She allowed the committee session to establish its natural pace. She observed Hegseth responding to security coordination inquiries with the intense focus of a representative who had already conversed with the impacted citizens and knew precisely what she intended to articulate. Hegseth appeared perfectly at ease. Questions regarding World Cup safety measures felt highly familiar to him following his testimony at the Schumer hearing the previous week. He possessed prepared responses covering boundary establishment procedures, risk evaluation mandates, and community engagement structures. He had delivered these exact phrases in previous instances. The explanations flowed with a smooth and practiced delivery. He remained completely unaware of the 3 photographs. The initial 41 minutes felt entirely standard, covering safety zone schedules, resident alert procedures, and federal partnership outlines. Hegseth provided highly measured responses. He mentioned the specific boundary requirements established by the Secret Service. He brought up the coordination frameworks utilized by FEMA. He appeared completely relaxed. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez then grabbed her microphone and addressed the secretary with a direct, meticulously controlled tone, projecting the voice of an outraged individual who determined that exact precision carries far more weight than raw anger. She stated that she represents New York's 14th congressional district, encompassing sections of the Bronx and Queens featuring neighborhoods that have housed working-class families for generations, and these exact areas now fall within the security boundary mandated for World Cup activities across the New York metropolitan region. She opened her dossier, announced the first document, and placed it beneath the overhead camera. She identified it as the Department of Defense World Cup Security Boundary Implementation Order, bearing a December 9th timestamp. She flipped it open. She noted that this order mandates strict security zones surrounding every World Cup stadium and all connected infrastructure across the 16 host municipalities. She directed his attention to a specific highlighted segment detailing the designated boundary areas. She read that the order permits the temporary eviction of residential inhabitants whenever a security evaluation concludes that their continued presence poses an intolerable operational hazard. She looked up, emphasizing that temporary eviction of residential inhabitants was officially permitted by his department on December 19th before extracting her second piece of evidence. She presented the New York metropolitan region boundary map generated directly by his agency. She positioned the map beneath the display camera. She pointed out that the boundary stretches considerably past the immediate vicinity of MetLife Stadium. It encompasses sections across 3 separate New Jersey counties along with 2 distinct New York boroughs. She navigated to another marked section of the paperwork. She stated that within the New York segment of this boundary, the schematic highlights 14 residential blocks inside her specific district that are classified as Zone 4 security sectors. She raised her eyes while repeating the phrase Zone 4. She referred back to the initial order to emphasize that a Zone 4 classification initiates compulsory temporary eviction procedures. She placed the document down, reiterating that 14 blocks within her district faced forced removal simply due to a soccer championship. She then retrieved her third piece of evidence. She introduced the document as the eviction notification registry for Zone 4 sectors within New York's 14th Congressional District, which was supplied to comply with a binding congressional subpoena. She opened the registry to reveal that 847 individual households were issued eviction warnings between January 15th and February 28th. She looked up at the secretary to emphasize that staggering number of 847 households. She turned to another highlighted portion of the text. She noted that these warnings provided inhabitants a mere 30 days to completely empty their residences. She added that short-term housing compensation was capped at $2,400 for each household. She set the paper down and highlighted the absurdity of offering $2,400 for a 30-day eviction in New York City, a location where the median monthly lease sits at $3,800. She stared directly at Hegseth to stress that offering $2,400 to vacate a residence for 30 days in a metropolis where the baseline rent exceeds that entire sum is unacceptable, especially since the government provided zero storage funding, zero moving funds, and absolutely no assurance that residents could reclaim their original apartments, leaving them with nothing but a federal warning, a small check, and 30 days to secure a safe place for their children to sleep. I must pause the narrative for a brief moment. If you strongly agree that hardworking families are owed far more than a 30-day warning and a meager payout to abandon their homes for a sporting event, hit the hype button on this video right away. The hype button is located directly adjacent to the like button. You are permitted to hype videos 3 times daily completely free of charge. We possess a 7-day window to push this content into the top 100 most hyped videos across the entire YouTube platform. Every single engagement truly makes a difference. Hit the button immediately and continue watching because the Congresswoman possesses 2 additional files, and the final document reveals the exact fate of the families who lack the financial means to relocate. Hegseth leaned forward to argue that World Cup security boundaries are determined through exhaustive risk evaluations, adding that the short-term eviction procedures feature reimbursement and assistance frameworks specifically engineered to reduce community disruption while guaranteeing the tactical safety parameters necessary to protect the public. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez raised her hand to stop him, announced her 4th document, and positioned it directly under the camera lens. She explained that this document represented an independent survey her staff executed regarding the 847 households slapped with eviction warnings. She opened the report for the committee to view. She stated that out of the total households contacted, 623 followed the order and left, while 224 refused to comply. She flipped to a specific marked demographic breakdown. She noted that among the 224 refusing households, 67% blamed a total inability to finance backup accommodations even while utilizing the provided $2,400 stipend. She placed the report down to emphasize that 150 families in her district literally lacked the funds to leave despite the federal payout, precisely because that amount completely fails to cover leasing, moving fees, storage units, and a full month of substitute lodging within the 5 boroughs. She then grabbed the 3 printed photographs she had carried inside, flipped them right side up, and displayed them individually for the broadcast cameras. She described the first picture as an elderly woman positioned outside a residential complex located on a Bronx street. She noted that this specific constituent has resided in that exact location for 34 consecutive years. She explained that the woman was handed an eviction warning back in January. She lacked the financial resources necessary to relocate. She currently remains inside her apartment. She lives in constant fear, unsure if armed personnel will physically drag her out prior to the commencement of the sporting event. She described the second picture as showcasing a 5-person family consisting of 2 parents and 3 kids. She stated that they emptied their unit utilizing the $2,400 stipend. She noted they are presently crashing on the floor of a relative's living space in Queens. She explained they have absolutely no idea whether they can reclaim their former apartment once the 30-day window closes, largely because their property manager has already advertised the space at a significantly inflated monthly rate. She described the third picture as a residential street within her district displaying vacant structures that housed vibrant families just 3 months prior, which now sit dark and completely silent simply because a federal safety mandate classified those residents as a tactical hazard to a soccer match. She placed the pictures down and reminded the secretary that these examples are not theoretical concepts. She passionately declared that these individuals are her direct constituents, the very citizens she was elected to champion, who never opted to reside inside a World Cup militarized zone, who were never questioned regarding their willingness to vacate, and who simply received a government mandate paired with a tiny check in 30 days to completely reorganize their existence. She then extracted her fifth and final piece of evidence. She introduced it as the Department of Defense internal budget breakdown regarding the Zone 4 eviction initiative. She opened the financial report for the room to see. She read that the comprehensive price tag for the short-term eviction compensation initiative across every single host municipality equaled $47 million. She flipped to a highlighted column to reveal that the comprehensive price tag for the physical safety barriers erected inside those newly emptied Zone 4 sectors equaled $2.3 billion. She placed the document down, contrasting the $47 million allocated for human beings against the $2.3 billion allocated for the physical barricades that took their place. She stared intensely at Hegseth, noting that he blew $2.3 billion on barricades and vacant streets after dropping a mere $47 million to effectively banish the actual citizens. She pointed out that the physical barricades were valued 49 times higher than human lives within his agency's fiscal planning. She looked directly at the secretary and stated that she harbored one final inquiry that could not be located inside any of the presented paperwork. She demanded to know whether a single individual inside his department, while this mandate was actively being authored, bothered to ask about the fate of the actual families rather than just inquiring about the boundaries or the tactical logistics. She firmly pressed him on whether anyone actually asked that crucial question. Hegseth parted his lips to argue that the eviction guidelines were formulated through massive community engagement and that the financial reimbursement structure was crafted to supply substantial aid while maintaining the valid safety necessities inherent to managing a worldwide spectacle of this magnitude. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez interrupted him smoothly, maintaining a perfectly level vocal tone. She informed him that she was halting his explanation right there. She stared him down and declared that $2,400 does not constitute substantial aid in New York City. 30 days fails to serve as proper warning for a 5-person household, and a security zone that drains $2.3 billion to construct yet dispenses a mere $47 million to reimburse the citizens. It banishes represents a fundamentally broken framework. She asserted that it functions as a framework where metal barriers carry profound value while human beings carry absolutely none. She pivoted toward the committee leader to formally propose entering all 5 documents alongside the 3 printed photographs directly into the permanent congressional archive. She additionally proposed that the committee mandate an instantaneous audit of the eviction reimbursement structures across every single World Cup host municipality, demanding that the household stipend be adjusted to mirror the true cost of relocation within each respective local real estate market. She proposed a final motion demanding that 0 additional households face eviction from Zone 4 sectors without a comprehensive congressional audit regarding the actual necessity of those specific boundary classifications. Every single one of her 3 motions secured an immediate second from the committee. All 3 motions successfully passed the floor. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez systematically collected her paperwork. She retrieved the 3 printed photographs last, stared at the images for a brief moment, and tucked them safely away inside the dossier. She directed her gaze at Hegseth one concluding time to remind the secretary that she grew up in the Bronx, that she is intimately familiar with those specific streets and buildings, and that she personally knows the elderly woman featured in that initial photograph. She stated that she has knocked on that exact door during every single political campaign she has ever launched. She reiterated that the woman has occupied that exact unit for 34 consecutive years. She raised her own children inside those walls. She arranged her husband's funeral from that very address. She paused before concluding that his department officially labeled her a tactical hazard to a soccer championship and attempted to buy her departure for a mere $2,400. She finally sealed the dossier. Make sure to subscribe to this channel right now because tomorrow we will drop the complete eviction warning registry covering all 16 host municipalities. We will expose every single Zone 4 classification, every household that received a warning, every family lacking the funds to comply, and the comprehensive itemized receipt for the $2.3 billion in physical barricades erected once the citizens were removed. The official congressional audit kicks off later this week. The paperwork is entirely authentic. The photographs are entirely authentic. The eviction warnings originated directly from his own agency. Furthermore, Pete Hegseth lacked any coherent response for a Bronx congresswoman who simply demanded to know if anyone inside his department actually cared about the fate of the displaced families. Smash that like button immediately. Share this broadcast across every single platform. 8,047 households, a 30-day warning, a tiny stipend, billions blown on barricades, millions tossed at citizens, and a loyal resident of 34 years sitting in the dark wondering if armed guards will drag her out before the opening kickoff.